Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. No, no, no. Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me till I come marching home.
Hi, I'm Silver Donald Cameron. In 1994, I interviewed a number of veterans and their wives about their experiences during World War II. The result was a show called The Crimson Flower of Battle, which was broadcast nationally on Vision TV and has been shown several times here on Talil. Our veterans had truly remarkable stories to tell, and we weren't able to use all of them in the network show. Over the next few weeks and months, however, Talil is pleased to present the complete tapes of these interviews just as they were recorded. The sound and the picture aren't always perfect. You can sometimes hear people speaking in the background, and occasionally someone walks in front of the camera. But these tapes are important. They're part of the heritage of our island, they're part of the history of the war, and some of the people that we interviewed are no longer living. Today, Wilfred Samson, the man whose memory started the whole project. Wilfred was just 16 when he joined the Merchant Marine, and his vivid memories of convoy duty in the North Atlantic made me curious about the memories of other veterans in Isle Madame. Wilfred died in November 1996.
Well, I want to take you back to Halifax just for some of the details that we talked about in that little break.
Yeah.
Tell me about tell me a little more about the graveyard and tell me what was in the shop window, the display of the shop window.
Well, you know, it's not moral for sure.
It was right.
Well, there was a sailor and a wren, or I think it was a wren. They told me anyway. That's what they told me, and they were making love right in the window of Eaton's where it was. The Eaton is gone now. It's not there no more. But that's one of the things that I've seen. You know, it's hard to believe that you're right in public in the daylight. You know, and people were half-cloaked, staggering around. And up in that cemetery across from St. Mary's there was a kind of a gravestone that was flat, and they had liquor on there, and they were auctioning off this liquor there, you know, but nobody was buying, but there's lots of liquor around anyway.
And well-dressed women.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, where the old theater is today, it used to be a Furrier's up there, Maritime Furrier's, I think it was called then. And the seamen and civilians were coming out of there with fur coats and giving it to the women that were passing on the street. Yeah. A lot of them had fur coats. I don't know if they ever got the fur coats back, but there must have been somebody around Halifax well dressed for the next winter.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You started so the first part over on a cable ship?
Well, I was in a cable ship, yeah, that's the first. Well, I left home at 15, but I worked in a hospital first in St. Martin's, and then I came back when school, but I left again and went to Halifax, and that's the first job I had in the cable ship. Yeah.
And would the cable ship be traveling with the convoy also?
Well, they were then, but when I was on it, I wasn't on it that long, but when I was on it, they were, yeah. Yeah. They weren't going that fast, you know, 10 knots, it's the most you can get into those old ships anyway, you know. And of course they had to be a certain distance away from each other, sideways and forward, so they wouldn't have a problem running into each other. I guess that's where the Germans learned a lot, how to get in the middle of the convoy, because the corvettes were on the outside. And they could sink 5 or 6 ships in the middle, and while everything was going on, they could take off, you know. And it was hard to get them that way. They could sink there and go between waters and stay there and stay quiet, you know. I guess in some way it was benefiting the U-boat packs, you know, with big convoys, because the rate of speed the convoys were going and how they were spread out with big convoys, 100 ship, you know, and takes a lot of room. And there was only 2 corvettes or a destroyer around there, you know.
I missed what you said about the ship blowing up. You saw another one go up?
Well, I seen what happened is that one night that it must have been a tanker with high octane gas that got torpedoed and the water was all on fire, you know. And you couldn't stop. You weren't allowed to, because if you stopped, you were a sitting duck, you know? And the only thing they could do was leave the Navy come along and pick them up, I guess. That's what they used to do, I guess. But it was scary because you heard screams. I don't know what's coming from the water, but it must have been from people that were in the water. I don't know. Scared the heck out of me. I was pretty young, and I was impressed, you know, at 16 years old, at what's going on around you. When you left a village where you never seen anybody murdered or a fight, you know, everybody helping each other, and all at once you're thrown in the middle of this kind of, you know, scene that's pretty horrible to you, I guess.
Tell me about your luxurious quarters that you took after that.
Yeah, well, we used to be, our quarters were down on the lower deck, see, but from the lower deck where our quarters was, there was a companionway, which is what you call a stairway, and when you come up to the main deck, you were still inside, and on the left-hand side there was a bathtub there, and then you went through the door to the main deck. So after that happened, you know, it shook me so much that I never ever took my clothes off at night after that. I went to bed with my clothes and my life preserver next to me, a life jacket, and went to sleep in the bathtub. I figured it'd be close enough if the ship got torpedoed, I could probably have a better chance of escape, you know. So, and I don't know, I think they played a trick on me, the older people, you know, the older seamen. I think they turned the tap on one night because I woke up, I had water underneath me, so yeah, I'd rather be wet that way than be blown up and down below, so I guess to me it didn't matter that much, you know.
The place is full of cockroaches, too.
Oh, cockroaches. I never seen the likes. I was on many, many ships after the war, but I've never seen it like that one. In the engineer's mess there, they had a little pantry. And at night, when the pantry was probably about, 5 feet by 3 feet, or, you know, around that area, just above the zinc, when you put the light out at night, I guess they must have came out at that time, but after a while, when it was dark in there, you could see there was a part of the deck head was black and the part was white, although it was painted white. Well, when you put the light on, here's all these, there must have been hundreds of thousands of cockroaches had come out there above the zinc, you know. So, you know, and they'd crawl across your face sometimes. One fell in my mouth, I remember one time, and I kept spitting, trying to get it out, but, you know, even though he wasn't there anymore, it felt like if he was. Yeah, cockroaches in those days, they almost all get away, the ships. Well, of course, in Halifax, too, even in the old, I'd lived in, down on Olive Street, and the friends of ours that had old apartments there, it was just as bad there. I remember one night sitting at a table, and the lady opened a can of milk, and we turned around and talked, and the first thing I looked back, and he was one of those cockroaches sticking out of the hole in the can of milk, coming out of the can. So, you know, I guess in old city maybe you find that a lot. And I guess today you wouldn't see that as much. But of course they say the cockroaches are the oldest living animal.
They say they'll survive.
They were the ones that first came about, and they'll survive, they'll be the last, I guess. I believe it.
You joined the Army and you were taken aboard a troop ship. And
I joined the Army. I got when it was after my training, see, they used to call the names of the ones that were going to stay and the ones that were going to go overseas. When they called my name, I was supposed to go in the line that wasn't going overseas, but I turned around and I went with some of my buddies in the line that were going overseas. Well, I ended up in Halifax on the Empress of Scotland, and I was sure I was going over. I was anxious to get overseas, you know. You're young, you're crazy, I guess. Anyway, they put me to check the bags going by the alcove, and there was a little office off the alcove. And I had my feet up on the desk checking all the bags come you know, the soldiers carrying their bags and they're checking all this gear, you know, going by. And all at once I seen my officer going by. Well, I put two and two together. I knew the jig was up. So when he went by, I jumped up, you know, to hide. And my 2 feet had gone to sleep, my 2 legs. So I fell flat on my face, and that's how he caught me. He come back and he seen me there. So they hauled me back to Aldershot, gave me hell, give me some extra duties. Yeah. So I never made it there overseas. Because you have to be 19 really to go overseas in the army during the war, at the end of the war, which was when I went in, you know. So then I joined the Pacific Force after. And I was trained with American sergeants. There were 17 American sergeants came over to train us, Marines, and all American weapons were trained with, and even the American helmet we had to wear, because our own helmet, we couldn't put our earphones over your head with our helmets. So we had to train with all their rifles, you know, Garand rifles, and mortars, and helmets. The rest was Canadian clothes we had on. But I remember at Garand, there were 107 pieces. You had to strip that down and clean that every day, you know. They had they had a kind of a carbine that the officers wore. They were really nice guns, you know. The machine guns were nice. Although our Bren gun, you get used to that pretty good, you know. You get stripped the Bren gun and strip it down probably in so many seconds and put it back together in a minute and so many things. You train every day, you know.
Let me take you right to the troop ship. What's it like aboard a troop ship? The Empress of Scotland was a luxury.
Well, there was about 8 decks, but it wasn't luxury. You know, they'd all been fixed up to haul troops over. There were about 8 decks, A, B, C, D, I don't know how many. I know the first day I was there, I ended up with a bunch of British seamen there drinking beer, and I sat down with them and drank beer, you know. I was about 4 decks down. I thought I was going to have a ball with going overseas, but they changed. My mind got changed.
How many men would there be aboard that? I mean, you said that this is a really crowded ship.
Gee, I don't know. They wouldn't tell you then because it's kind of a secret then, I suppose. Oh, you mean, do you mean the crew or do you mean the...
Well, I'd just like to get sort of a feeling for you.
The army.
The ship, what does the ship feel like? What's, you know, is it...
Oh, there was men everywhere. There was Army and Air Force. They were going all to England, so... Oh, a big amount. Of course, there was more coming all the time, see? Before I left. When I left there, I imagine that troop ship didn't leave till the next day, although I wish it had... I'd had one the day before, I'd have wound up in England, and I really wanted to go, you know.
Well, at one point during the war, didn't you meet somebody else from here in Italy? How did that...
That's just after the war.
Okay.
Right after the war, yeah. Well, we were in Poland first, and we got a load of coal, and went down to a place called Genoa in the north of Italy to land the coal. It was going up in Switzerland with they had these big scuttle-like thing on a cable and went up the mountains. And I got loaded this afternoon on Vino Bianco, white wine, and I fell asleep on the gun deck, and they tried to wake me up to go ashore, but they couldn't wake me. I was really loaded, I guess, with that wine. I wasn't used to drinking wine. I woke up about 12 o'clock at night, I guess. And when I went by, I seen the steward was selling cargo, you know. We had flour aboard, and we had been to different places to land at other cargo, but that we had that left for UNRA, United Nations Relief Fund. He said to me, "We've never seen anything," and he passed me a wad of bills, American bills. So I went ashore, and first bar I went to was called the Allied Bar. Here I get face to face with Dr. Martel's son here, that I used to play ball with, Francis Martel. Couldn't believe it. You know, it's funny sometimes, in every port you go to, normally you see the Newfoundlander or Cape Breton was on the shore there. They missed their ship, or they were waiting to come back DBS. They call that some British seaman anyway. Delayed British seaman or something like that.
Distressed.
Distressed British seaman. They took you aboard and they paid you a shilling a day, 25 cents a day. And you got home anyway. So. You work with the crew and you ate, you know, and you live with them. Usually you went to the Canadian consul and, you know.
Yeah. The,
They looked after you. Or a British consulate, you know.
well, I want to skip to the Burt, too, because the gentleman with the prisoners of war had been in Japan.
Oh, yeah, well, I was,
Did they give you any sense of what their experience had been?
well, I drove them around all day. Well, you see, it was a big ambulance I was driving, and I had a sergeant from the British with me, and he kind of talked about it, you know. They had a hard time. They were manhandled a lot of times, and they opened their mouth, and they had to bow, you know, all the time. I get quite a lot from them, but then I heard later on with the ones that were prisoner of war from around here, they had to eat grasshoppers to live, and white rats. But you couldn't cook them, he said, because, you know, they used to sear them with a match underneath. That's the only thing that kept them alive, because they only had half a cup of rice a day. So one fellow from Hardwest died, but one from Pellegro, I was a friend that he lived, he's still around. Probably, you know, we'd get an interview with him. He could tell you a lot more about it than I could. But the British said, you know, they had suffered terribly. They talk about it sometimes. They had no medical supplies and very little to eat. They were skeletons. They were really walking skeletons, you know.
Even when they got to the Burt.
Yeah, even when they got to the Burt, and then they had given them something to eat before, so they must have been in terrible shape when they got them. Yeah.
One other thing that some others have remarked that the war changed the world.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it.
How did it change it?
Well, it done a lot of good and a lot of bad, I guess. Some good. A lot of good came out because of new medical, you know, they found things to look after diseases and things like that. It was bad what they did it on. They did it on people that were prisoners, you know, but they found a lot of new things in medicine. It advanced medicine an awful lot. It advanced communications an awful lot. If you look at radar and all this, there's only one thing that it didn't do what it should have done. Learn people how to get along with each other. And maybe that would have been, if it had done that, it would have really done something, you know. But you can see now there's fighting going on ever since the war stopped. Never stopped. It's still going on. I guess it will forever, probably. You're
I
done.
think not. I think not. How about your own community? You came back to airship.
Yeah, Petty Rock.
Yeah. Was the
Oh yeah,
was this
all the soldiers were coming back, and a lot of them drank a lot because I think they had went to so much, you know, that they want to get away and forget all the things they had got into, a lot of them, and some of them were married, and probably they did it in some other way, get together and talk, you know. We used to have dances a lot. We used to go to dances at the end of the war, so. Talk sometimes. We never talk much about it, but, you know, I seen a guy getting loaded one night, and he thought he wasn't in the battle right yet, you know. An awful thing to see, you know. He's cringing underneath the stage near the dance hall and hollering, watch them, they're coming there, don't you see them, you know, these, what's that, like the DTs or something, things like that, you know, that you can see it had affected some of them, you know. And you can still see some of them it affected. Some of them won't be sociable if you even talk about the war, you know. Change their, I guess, their makeup, the way they thought before. I guess, well, any war would do that. Mm-hmm. And if you go through an experience, every experience changes a person, and those people had gone through terrible experiences, so, you know, big change in them. I found, after I come back and met a lot of them, and, you know, I had fun with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Now is the hour that we must say goodbye. Soon you'll be sailing far across
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not worry them, as the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we shall remember them.